Happy to introduce our guests on the 30th anniversary. Now, this is a young business, and 30 years is not very old, but two people who made strong contributions to this station, very well known in the community. My former colleagues and my present friends are still here, and Faith and I are delighted to have Ray Shelton and Paul Clark. Now, Ray is now the Director of Advertising of Greater Louisville First Federal, and you're very familiar with his commercial work, but for many years, and he has a historic part in our station. With him is Paul Clark, who for many years was the chief announcer and was now the Executive Secretary of the St. Matthews and East Jefferson County Business Association. Now, Paul, Faith mentioned at the beginning of the program that I had said you were really historic because there are no chief announcers anymore, and many stations never had them. They're sort of like the dinosaur. They were very good when we had them, but the business has changed to that extent.
You don't really need them anymore, I guess, Milton, because in the old days, and I'm going back even before you came here, which is quite a while, as you remember, we used to have network radio. This is even before the days of TV, and I had orders from somebody, whoever somebody happened to be. Don't have the same voice on in succession. In other words, if you made a break at 2:30,
have a different voice.
A would be 2:30, B would be 3 o'clock,
right.
And usually that was a 30-second break, and sometimes it would only be an SI.
What was your first relationship with this young man who sits to your right?
Well,
must have been pleasant. He's laughing.
WHAS television was coming on slowly. As some of you may remember, television wasn't a moneymaker in the early days, and WHAS TV was in no hurry to get going. But finally the time came. It was a case of having to do it because everything was ready. And Harold Fair, who had come here from Des Moines, was the program director for radio, which is all we had at the moment, called me down one day and he said, we need a TV announcer because fellows like Milton and Jim Walton and some of the others were all busy doing something else. So he said, listen, see around and see if we can find someone. So I started listening, and I heard a nice voice out of WLOU.
Right.
And I think it was part-time, I'm not sure, but anyway.
That's right. I was going to university.
I caught him in the afternoons.
Right.
And I listened about 3 times in the afternoon, and I said, I think we have a prospect. So he listened, and he said, sounds pretty good, let's call him in. So we called in Mr. Shelton, and Harold and I were sitting in the office, and they said, Mr. Ray Shelton is out to see you. Raymond Shelton, I think it was then. Raymond L. And we looked up, and in walks this handsome 22-year-old gentleman. We already knew how he sounded.
What are you doing here, Ray?
And when we looked...
Milt, that's a Zesta commercial. I'm putting peanut butter on the cracker, which is not easy in live television.
Did he look like that then?
Well, did you have to eat it after you put it on there, Ray?
Yes, but you didn't say much after you ate it.
How about the audition, this big meeting when you came down? Were you extremely nervous?
Let him pick it up. He had a handsome guy in the door, and let him go, and then I'll pick it up from there.
We went through all the routine. I mean, I've got a little story to tell on Milton, too, Faith.
Okay,
We might, if we have time, we'll get to. It had nothing to do with television, but it's an interesting story. But anyway, we went through the routine of talking and what did you do and where did you do it and so on. And he had a varied experience for 22 years, and plus a real good education and still working on it. So then we gave him the audition, but believe me, you were in, Ray, before you took any.
I didn't know
That's the
that.
first time I knew that. You can see why he's in PR work now, Milt. He really built me up. The audition was funny. I was nervous, of course, and it's a good thing that the equipment had not arrived, these huge, expensive cameras. So it's a good thing because had they looked at me on camera, they could have tell the script I was holding was shaking fairly well. But it was in one of the radio studios, top of 7th and Broadway, the building there.
You would have still got the job.
6th and Broadway. Would I have, Bob?
Yes, you would.
And they said, here, take the script. I had not had any chance to look it over, read it cold, as we say, and we don't have the equipment here yet, but would you read to that music stand over there and pretend it's a camera? And, of course, I wanted the job badly. I don't know, 30 people auditioned or something.
Oh, I imagine so.
And I said, sure, I'll read to the music stand all month if you want me to, if I can get the job. But the interesting part that heightened my nervousness was that Paul listened, liked it, then called in Harold Fair next, or was it Ralph Hansen?
No, Ralph wasn't in on it yet.
Ralph wasn't in, and I did the audition over, and I thought, my Lord, they must be making fun of me. They called a third person in to listen, The time I'd done the third commercial, I was really limp with it all. And then they said, well, that's pretty good. We'll let you know something later, wasn't it?
Oh, sure, we couldn't let you know right
No,
away.
nothing
So
happens
it was,
right
I remember it like it was yesterday.
What were you doing, Ray? You'd look at the copy and pretend this music
I would just
stand was
look
a
up.
camera.
It was really radio, and I was pretending that the music stand was a camera. That's
What was your starting salary?
$65 a week. But
It
that
was
an
TV without cameras, what it was.
Yeah, that was an increase, Faith.
We have another picture here. This is, Ray, you won an award with a law program you did. I don't know whether this was a panel of that or not.
Yes, it was. It was called It's the Law, and the American Bar Association gave us an award.
You got the Silver Gavel
Silver
Award.
Gavel, huh?
What's the story about Milt, Paul? We've got
Yeah, let's hear this. I
Well-
think this could be interesting.
Milt was hired without ever being seen by us. This was about 46, I think, wasn't it, Milton, when he came here?
He auditioned on the telephone?
He sent
No,
his
he sent a record,
resume.
not tape, record. This was before the days of the tapes. And it was a good letter and a good resume and a good record. And we needed an announcer, and he needed a job. And we talked about it a little bit and said, let's give him a whirl.
Yeah, the station's really taking a chance.
Yeah.
They've been sorry ever since.
Look what happened.
They never
Can't get rid of him.
Well, you were mentioning the fact that there were 3 live shows. Now, your show was called Let's Look It Over.
Yeah,
and
take
there were
off
3
from Let's Talk It
live
Over. Right.
shows back to back. Lure of the Library.
Was the other one with Ken Meeker.
That sounds horrendous.
This was Sunday at noon when we had the greatest audience, I'm sure.
You would,
Most people were either in church or they were eating.
you would never attempt that production-wise again, though.
Listen to both of you, though. Over the years, announcers are interesting people, and through all those years there was a great parade of different personalities. Were there not, Ray and Paul?
Sure.
We had some good ones, and some still here.
I love the manner. I've always admired Milton when words may not come out quite as distinctly as they should. He keeps a very straight face and goes forward, and that's a real sign of a professional. I crack up, or I say, excuse me, or a little quit. I'm sure you have had similar experiences, right, Ray? Is that one thing you learned? Just keep
yes.
plowing right ahead. You might have said something completely
Tell them
wrong.
what the theory is behind that, Ray.
Well,
They always say, well, the trouble is not in my mouth, but in your set.
Or to paraphrase what the late Pete French said, a great voice in news, as we all know. Pete said, I always rehearse my copy before I go into the studio, and this was radio or television. He did both, of course. And if you've got a rough name or a technical term, when you get in there, you don't pause before or after that, and it doesn't matter if it comes out upside down or backwards. They'll say, "My, he speaks with authority." And, that's probably
Pete was not wrong.
Have you had some humorous experiences of your own where you sort of flubbed or said the wrong word out of
yeah,
context?
we've all had those. I used to have trouble losing my place on the cue card of the teleprompter. And when Bob Pilkington or Dave Jones, one of our great guys who's been with us a long while, said, "Why did you pause?" I'd say it was for emphasis. Did you catch it?
Finding your place.
We're going to continue this with Ray Shelton and Paul Clark. It's like the old days having you back again. And we'll continue with Omelette and the 30th celebration with these 2 nice gentlemen right after this.
Years of television for the station. Today we're particularly talking about announcers, and 2 of the pros in that field, Ray Shelton and Paul Clark. Milt teases me sometimes when we're doing promos, and I take a big breath at the beginning, and by the end you're kind of way down there, it's all gone. That's another thing you learn, don't you?
Sure,
by
breathing.
Knowing, how to pause and how not to sound so forced.
And the worst thing any of us ever get into was running to the booth in the days of live booth and be out of breath.
Oh,
You
There's no
cannot
way to
read
recover.
copy.
No, it's
It's
agony.
a terrible feeling.
You try to hold the panting before you...
Or be amused at something and laugh and say later it was a cough. I
Well,
was
now,
stifling.
another thing, some of you who are very good in your craft can control yourself when somebody's trying to break you up. And I can understand there's been a lot of fun things that happen off camera.
I was
Such
doing
as?
the news in the early stages, if you want to hear one.
Uh-huh.
And your floor director, always a guy who isn't quite busy enough. Excuse me,
That's
your floor
true.
person. We have a female floor person. But one night late, and I think it was when that first year or 2 when I did the news and laid the news down and picked up my savings passbook for, may I say,
Right.
Greater Louisville
We
First
know
Federal
who it is,
Savings
right.
and Loan. And then put the passbook down and finished the news, then gave the scores and said the weather without a weather board. I want to ask you about your weather right in a minute. But anyway, right in the middle of this, I'm looking up, trying to be attentive to the camera and play the camera, and through the studio goes one of the floor directors with a naked mannequin over his shoulder. A girl yet. Just wandering through, and he thought I didn't see it the first time he came the second
Came
time.
back.
But you didn't dare laugh.
They
I was
did
too nervous to laugh at him.
Terrible pranks in those days.
Ray was easy to break up, at least I understand that. I'm not sure about that, but
Some people are unflappable. Our
Yes,
hosts
that's true.
cannot.
And they've done some bad tricks on you, haven't they,
Well,
Milton?
awful things.
Some we can't
What
tell.
did they do with your weather thing once?
Well, I had we had a thing called a magic weather writer. It was a box with a mirror set at a diagonal, and the camera would focus on the mirror, and then mysteriously handwriting would appear saying showers and sunny and cloudy, and invariably the person who was writing it couldn't spell, even though we had given him a sheet. So the word sunny would come out S-O-N-N-Y, cloudy would be cloudy with no U in it. Once they painted a horrible crack on the mirror. They got an artist in, and I thought, how can we, I come in and I said, what happened? And I said, well, I don't know. Until I came up close. It was the most realistic crack in the mirror I had ever
It was
seen.
your pride and joy. You came up with that idea.
We even had a musical theme.
People still ask me, let me interrupt, why you used caribou. So once and for all, before this show goes off today, tell them, what is
I used
that?
to not, at the end of the weathercast, I would say, and the temperature in Caribou, Maine is so-and-so. Well, when I started the program, it was like in January and February, very cold months. And I would always get the nation's, what I call the icebox, the coldest place in the nation. Invariably, it was Caribou, Maine, in the northernmost spot of the U.S. And people would say, well, where is Caribou? You're making it up. And I thought, well, if there's going to be that much interest in a funny name like Caribou, I'll just make it a theme and do it all the
Well,
time.
I think we've got some other fun things that you did while you were weatherman. You had that position for 19 years, Milt, wasn't it?
I was did weather vane for 19 years, and we did funny things.
What
like,
are you
for instance,
doing here?
they sent me out in the parking lot with a yardstick to show people how thick the snowfall was, and I felt, look, I'm 9 inches, Now then I got flaky here. I was out there, and I don't know, I thought, what are you doing out here, a grown man?
Looks like a little directing the band. And
A little nutsy
that's
stuff.
especially bad since you said partly cloudy the night before and no snow, right?
9 inches of partly
With
cloudy.
The
your
weatherman's worst.
Greater Louisville, were those just ad-lib? You've done them, or you did them so many, many years, Ray. Did it just come off the top of your head?
I used a cue sheet, as most of us do, to lead me through it, but we did pretty much the same copy over and over, so I knew them fairly well. But the worst thing was now, looking back, was when you say, how did you do a live commercial or a live show? When we take sometimes 2 or 3 takes to get a good polished commercial. And videotape did not come in until, what, about the mid-60s, I think. And now you wonder, my Lord, how did we ever get through those live ones?
Start flirting with a hand grenade,
well, for a
No way
time
to
they
go.
insisted on live, even though it was sometimes
Well,
very
I did
difficult.
GL's live,
That's
for a
what I
long
mean.
time.
It was a fun aspect, too, to
You
see
had
it
to-
actually happening.
But you had to be really more of a showman. We had a jeweler, I'll tell you a good one. Fortunately, the cameraman helped me here, who had me freeze a watch with a sweep second hand in a block of ice to show that it was first waterproof and secondly shockproof. On camera, I chipped the ice off of that watch, and I'm to show the sweep second hand. The line is, see there, the sweep second hand is still moving. I saw while chipping the ice off with the hammer, it had stopped. So instead of holding it for him, I just, see there, it's still moving.
That's thinking ahead. Thank you so much for some delightful stories. Ray Shelton and Paul Clark. Tell you about tomorrow's last omelet show in a few moments. With 30 years for television, for Channel 11, Jim Walton, Mr. Crusade himself, will be our guest tomorrow.
That's right, and a friend of our guests, Ray Shelton and Paul Clark, lo these many years, and my own. In addition to that, from the CBS show, The Dukes of Hazzard, we have Sonny Schroyer, who plays the part of that ineffectual
Bye.
deputy, Deputy Enos, as our guest tomorrow.
See you then.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Tonight at 7, Louisville Tonight continues to salute WHAS TV's 30th anniversary with a look at how television gets on the air and what's in your future as you look around your home video communication center. That's tonight at 7 on 11. Now stay tuned for CBS News next.